Welcome back to the shop. Today I am going to do a video focusing on a single line fuel delivery system for the LS platform I'm going to run in the buggy. LS platform, you're going to need about 58 pounds of pressure. I like the single line systems for hot rods, buggies, things like that because space is a premium. A lot of the conversion kits you see will use the Corvette style regulator, which I have used several times. This particular kit is from Aeromotive. I really like their products. I've only had one pump failure in 10 or 12 years, and it was a rough one. It left me on a trail in the middle of nowhere. We were able to splice in another pump and get it going, but that's a story for another day. This particular system is a true one-line system. The regulator is self-contained in the head of the fuel module, I guess you would call it, where the pump is located inside the tank. Now, a lot of people will run externally mounted rail style pumps for these LS platform engines. That's easy. And when you have a pump failure, it is very easy to replace them. My personal experience, though, is if you have a rail-mounted pump, you generally will be replacing that pump every year or two. The in-tank pumps, it's pretty rare they go out anymore. The pump cools nicely, and big benefit is it's a lot quieter. So I'm a bigger fan of the in-tank ones, but if you're off-roading and in the middle of nowhere, make sure you have prepared yourself for a contingency in case a pump does fail. But for now, let's focus on getting this system built. It is a really nice setup. I think I'm going to be really happy with it once this buggy hits the trails. So when I had them build this fuel tank, they went into their CAD and redesigned one that would hold somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 gallons. This one I think they said is volumetrically figured at 13.4. But I also had them baffle the inside of it, and I did that for a reason. It may not be the exact baffle that I wanted, but the type of fuel pump I'm using from Aeromotive will adapt into this real quick. First thing though, I've got to drill some holes, make it so the pump fits in. Now the pump I'm using is the Aeromotive, and it's an internally regulated system at 60 psi, so I don't have to run any kind of return, and I don't have to run that specialty regulator. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to point my outlet generally to the place I want and then figure out where a reference point is for the first hole. Now I'm going to use a template to drill this. Once I get the first one drilled, then I'll just go around with the rest of them. So I know I need straight up and down for my reference point. I want to do this sitting in the buggy. It doesn't really matter, but once I know where the outlet was going to go, I could remove this, but it's not any harder to do it while it's in here than it is out on the bench, and I'm not ready to fully disassemble that. Now, Aerodyne sends this little guide. This is really nice. You can set it in the hole, line up your top and bottom where you want them. And yes, you will have to vacuum your tank out. Now, once I get the first hole drilled, I center it where I need it. And I drill the second hole. I just use a couple of screws as guide plates. And then I'll just go around and drill the rest of them. I initially drill all the holes this exact size, and then I go back around and re-drill them to a quarter, so that gives me a little bit of flexibility. Now I'm going to test fit it and figure out at what position I want my top holes. Now there's another hole to drill between two of these holes, and that is for a permanent mount for the underside of this. And the slots here so I can get the teeth in the tank. And of course my hands are way too big, so it's always a pain in the butt for me to get these in. It's in and fairly tight. Okay, I can drill holes right between these two, and those will accommodate the tank mount. So I'm going to pop this back out. Maybe. Once I got all my holes drilled, and I drilled the two here. Now, the kit didn't come with any of these countersunk screws, so I will have to pick up a couple of those, and I will countersink up here. Now you don't have to countersink these because the gasket for these tanks, or for these pumps, are a thick squish gasket, so they'll take up imperfections along the way. These were really designed for like retrofitting other tanks. The other thing I'm going to do is anytime you drill, you know, you get that burr on the back side. I'm going to take that burr off because I just want everything flush. Everything comes with these aeromotive kits, including this little sump thingy here, which I really like this. Quick heads up, when you clamp down the pump, I always cut these clamps about here, and then I take a pair of pliers and I fold the sharp edges inward, because when you go to slide it into the foam, it likes to grab a hold. The less things that can hang up if you have to service it, the better. And the last thing I do that the kit doesn't come with is I zip tie my plug so that none of my wires are rubbing on anything or will vibrate and wear holes in anything. Just don't want to have a problem later. By the way, this little piece right here is the regulator for the system. Now I can install this without using this foam because of the sump in there, but I really like this system. I used the same one on my Cherokee, and it has worked absolutely flawless. It's a kind of a pain to get down in there, but once this is down inside of the baffles in there, I mean, you got to work to get this thing squeezed down enough to get it in there. But once it's in there, you won't have slosh issues, and this boot can help capture and feed fuel. So it's going in. Fat hands can barely fit in this thing. It drops right down into that sump, which is beautiful, or that baffle area. I would also show this. These two holes that hold up the mounting plate from underneath, I countersink those with just a 3/8 bit. That way I don't have to worry about this falling down. This fits really snug, so I really don't need those, but I have them, so I am going to use them. All right, I set the pump in, make sure it goes down nice and clean and easy. Now it will kind of get caught up on the foam a little bit. Once I've had it in and I make sure it goes down okay, then I will set this gasket in place. And make sure you put your outlet where you want it. Probably have to push down pretty hard just to get the nylon washer and nuts started. And then go around this. I always go in the start position on these. Try to go down in small increments. Don't tighten one up all the way and then go to the next one, tighten it up all the way. Just go around it a dozen times or so. This is a squish style gasket, so it will compress as it needs to. That way it'll make up for imperfections in tanks. This tank is a flat surface, so I really don't have to worry about that. But like if you were doing a retrofit on a hot rod, like I've done on everything else I own, you will end up with waves in it. Now I do have a vent coming because I don't like using those rollover things. I really don't want fuel leaking if I'm upside down. This is a sealed system. I'm going to keep it that way. Also got a couple little extra pieces, which I will throw in the emergency kit in case I have to do a trail repair. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to carry a spare pump. I may talk to Aeromotive about that. These have a year warranty on them, but the warranty really doesn't do you a lot of good if you're stuck on a ledge somewhere. All right, I'm not going to tighten this down on camera because, well, who wants to watch me do that? There you go. Vent goes here, and then my fuel line is going to come out here to a hose or to a fuel filter. I think while I'm doing this gas tank work, I think I will make this little intermediate line here. Now I'm using AN6 fittings for everything. And the line I'm using is a nylon braid over a high pressure PTFE fuel rated hose. I better tape that because if you don't, you have this real bad tendency of it unraveling. If you leave a real thin coat of tape up here, you can go right over the top of it with your outer connector, which I'm going to try to do. Just one thin layer is all I really want. Go right there. And I'm doing this just to keep that braid from coming loose. And I thread these until the hose bottoms out. And again, a little silicone on the threads helps them slide in. It also helps this go into the hose and creates the seal. try to keep my fittings at least somewhat nice. No. And yes, you should really use the aluminum anodized wrenches, but I've never been that critical on it. However, if you get a spot like right here, where, and that may not have even been from today, fixed. Million and one uses of a Sharpie. Now, if you do take the tape off, these fuzz out really quick. So I actually use just a skosh of grease and then try to be real careful starting my fitting. Here, turns the light on. Can't see. There we go. We're in. In this particular one, this turns because you have to be able to turn everything independent of each other, and then it'll seat. And again, any touch-ups you need to do for black works perfect. When you're installing these O-ring fittings into the fuel filter, I strongly recommend throwing a little bit of silicone lube on the O-ring. And when you torque it, don't go crazy. You just don't want it coming loose. And there's no need to install anything on your AN compression style fittings. Just decide the direction you want to go. Do yourself a favor, use counter wrenches. You can usually get away with it if you don't, but when you don't get away with it, it usually costs a lot of money and time and things like that. So. Okay, line's in, fuel pump assembly, tanks all bolted in. I like where my fuel filter is. I may move this, but right now I've got enough area to clearance everything. So I'm okay with that. Now I can always turn my fuel filter in a couple different directions if I need to adjust this. I can go with a little bit different style, but I kind of like how this is setting. I could move it forward, but I really don't want, I like where it's at, so I'm just gonna say that. It's gonna be tight putting the line in, but I'm okay with having a little bit of tight on the line, and I may have to trim a little angle out of my panel here for wrench access. But one of the reasons I wanted to get this part of it done right now is I have got so many things that go back here that are finished and I'm tripping over in the shop. So I want to, set the winch in here, get that out of my way. I've got a rack that goes here. I still have to put my relief vent in. I don't have that yet, so I will have to wait on that before I put the accessory rack. You can see I tied this in here to the fuel filter. I just use this little band clamp to mount it to the plate. And then again, coming out of the fuel filter, this hose at the bottom, and I looped it around because if I run into a situation where this filter starts leaking or I need to use a clamp style inlet outlet, I can convert it very easily, make it very serviceable for a trailer. The last piece of the puzzle arrived. I had to use a little adapter, but this is a pressure relief vent valve. Under here, my fuel line, again, I'm running a single fuel line, that's all I need. Underneath the passenger compartment, I run a piece of PEX. That way, if for some reason a line ruptures under your seat, it atomizes and becomes a liquid inside of this PEX and runs out either the front or the rear and not sprays fuel onto the passenger. Now, as you recall, I did the injectors and these fuel rails. Now, I've got the crossover tube for the fuel rails I put in the front, and in the back, the single line comes in right here and goes to a fuel gauge. Now, putting a fuel gauge in line does a lot of things. One of the first suspects when you're dead on a trail and your fuel pump's not working is fuel pressure. How much do you have? Remember, the LS platform needs about 58 pounds of pressure. So that's where I'm at now. Again, this part of the video is on final assembly, so that's why I went ahead and added this part of the fuel system to go with that single line fuel pump. That's going to do it for the single line fuel system for this LS platform. I will make sure it all works correctly once we're running and driving. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Running Cliffhanger today, which is a pretty nice shelf road, but it is wonderful scenery out here. Love the views up here. Small groups, way faster. Yeah, photos and videos never do this justice, but I always try. They're right on the edge of a cliff here. Gotta stop and look at the scenery once in a while.